Springs Wildlife State Park. Most of you probably saw the park already, and you probably enjoyed Fishbowl Spring, but it is a first-class magnitude spring with a discharge of 6 million gallons of fresh water, almost pure water per hour, coming out of a large cave system. And in the winter months, we get all kinds of species from the Gulf of Mexico visiting our spring. Snook, sheep's head, reds, black drum, and of course manatees. Constant water temperature 73, 74 degrees year round. Now the manatees are going to start coming in because the Gulf waters are cooling down. And even though that manatee looks like he has a huge fat layer, they're actually a very thin fat layer, so they suffer from cold stress. They got to come into the warm springs. And this area, our county, has 7 rivers that are spring-fed. Crystal River, Salt River, Little Homosassa, Big Homosassa, the Chassahowitzka. They come out of beautiful springs out of limestone bedrock, the Florida aquifer. And that aquifer provides water for most of Florida. Now we call this body of water Pepper Creek, named so for the abundance of wild pepper bushes that used to grow along its banks. They're now extinct, but the Seminole Indians utilized the toxic red berries for paint and ceremony, and the leaves they brewed into a tea for cough and cold. But in fact, the name Homosassa in the native tongue means land where the wild peppers grow. Another translation is river of fish because we have so much fish in the Homosassa. Now the reason why it's not that real pretty spring water color is because of the tannins in the water from the decaying plants. A lot of these springs pop up in the woods to your right, and they flow across the landscape picking up natural tannins. So it's a tea-colored water, but it's clean, natural, and normal. Up ahead on our right, you can see the effects of some recent storms, and there's a turtle on the left. A couple of turtles there, about 10 yards on the left. Now that fallen tree, yes, we were spared from Hurricane Ian. Unfortunately, it did a lot of damage to our south. But we thought it was going to hit here. We had to batten down the animals, lift some of the manatees out of the water on forklifts, put them on a special truck, ship them to SeaWorld for their protection. And here Orlando got it worse than we did. Some wood ducks. There's a male wood duck and a female to our right. If you're on the left side of the vessel, you can stand up almost even with the front of the boat. Wood ducks. The male has those amazing colors and those red eyes. The female is a little more subdued with a white ring around her eyes. And ahead to our left, up in those trees, right above the front of the boat, is our fall color we're so proud of. Now you may wonder what all those boxes are on the right-hand side. Those are the wood duck nesting boxes. They'll start to take up their positions on the nest there soon. Now the female is amazing. She is going to fly at that hole at the top of the nest about 30 miles an hour. At the very last moment, she's going to put on her brakes, pull up her wings, and while still flying, shoot through that hole, hitting the back of the box and ricocheting down to her eggs. Those 10 or 12 eggs take about 28 days to hatch, and once they do, she'll jump out, call up to her ducklings, and they'll plop out of that hole like little fuzzy ping pong balls following her around. Those are predator shields to base the boxes. Now up ahead on the right, on the left, past this tree, this overhanging tree, you're going to see some yellow leaves in that tree on the left. Those are wild grapes on the left. Muscadine, you know, the kind of grapes that have a real thick skin, but they're delicious. A lot of people don't know it, but Florida had a huge grape and wine industry as far back as the 1850s. Farmers grew grapes, shipped muscadine wine all over the world, even France cherished our wine. But something happened in the 20s and 30s that killed our wine and grape industry, and that was called Prohibition, of course. So farmers were really hurting. They got together in the 20s and 30s and tried to decide on another cash crop, and that's when they decided to start growing citrus. Oranges, lemons, grapefruit. Turtle on the left. I'll try to find you guys an alligator. And there's a whole mess of turtles on the left on that brown log coming up. Look at them lined up end to end, just like Tampa traffic, all lined up. Now they'll do that for a couple of reasons. Those are red-bellied and yellow-bellied sliders. They do that, number one, to get away from those pesky gators, and also, if you could think of a turtle shell like an extension of your finger, like a fingernail, if you soak your fingers too long in the water, well, the fingernails get soft and pliable. So same thing with a turtle. They have to harden up their shell. Keep your eyes open on the right-hand side. We saw some wood ducks earlier along the shore on the right. Now we have a real strange object in the water coming up on the left. And people ask, what is that big cement thing doing way out here yonder in the middle of the forest? Up there about 50 yards on the left, giant pyramid. Well, there's 4 of those things. The rest are buried in the bank. That's all that's left of a giant water tower they wanted to put up. You see, way back in the late 1920s, developers wanted to put all kinds of homes along this creek. Well, they needed a water source, they needed a water tower. Funny story, along came the Great Depression, they lost their funding, so tower never went up, homes never went in. We got to keep our part. And we're not going through people's backyards. A very classic Florida ecosystem to our left is called a hammock forest. I'm sorry, to our right. I knew this wasn't going to work out going backwards here. To our right's a hammock forest. It's an elevated area, yet it's swampy with springs popping up streams characterized by oaks, maples, palms. And if we were a little further to our south, the hammocks have wild citrus. More wood ducks on the right-hand side coming up on the right, near that nest. Wood ducks. Now we're coming around an island here. We call it Palm Island or Monkey Island. Funny story about this island. It's man-made, formed by the dredging of the creek. You can tell it's man-made by looking at the base. You'll see some corrugated material around it. You see, way back in the early 1960s, this was a privately owned exotic wildlife park with lions, tigers, bears, monkeys, elephants, hippos. And they put a band of spider monkeys on the island. They dredged the creek, made the island, put a band of spider monkeys thinking, oh, spider monkeys will stay put, they don't like the water. They'll be a nice attraction for our boat rides like ours right here. Problem was, when the vines and trees and such started growing, those little rascals found ways to get off the island. They would swing out and jump down upon boats like ours, stealing people's stuff, and going back on the island with it. Well, they had to relocate those little guys to the new Monkey Island at the Florida Cracker Trail, just about 3 miles from here. Florida Cracker Trail, Monkey Island. Another turtle on our right-hand side. The yellow flowers to our left are swamp marigolds. And all those little cute lavender flowers you see like on the right, that's climbing aster. They grow up the trees, climbing aster. And those red berries to our left, up there in that tree, even with the front of the boat dock, moon holly, more red berries. So there's a lot of things you can eat out here. Of course, all the meat tastes like chicken, gator tail, snake, turtle, all taste like chicken. But they say if you cook a snapping turtle properly, if you prepare it properly, there are 7 distinct flavors of meat on a turtle. Fish, shrimp, chicken, beef, pork, veal, turtle, all on a turtle. Yeah. Good? Another classic Florida environment to our left-hand side. That's a A pine flatwoods, about 70% of Florida is covered with this kind of ecosystem, characterized by pine trees, salt palmetto, St. John wort, dry sandy soil, and rattlesnakes. You may see some burn marks at the base of those trees. That's from the Park Service doing controlled burning, trying to mimic the natural process of lightning strikes and forest fires hundreds of years ago before man arrived in Florida. Fire raged across our landscape, and it was actually beneficial to the forest, cleaning out the undergrowth. And the trees didn't die because the fire couldn't reach the top. Now, if we let the undergrowth grow up, then we wouldn't have a major forest fire. It would go to the canopy. Turn around, look to your hard left, you'll see them turtles climb that tree. People say turtles can't climb that tree. Yes, they do. That dead tree right here in the water on the left. There they go. Coming up on our right-hand side, we have some beautiful trees hanging over the water. That's the American red cedar. We'll see them when we go around this turn. Those trees are a big, important part of our past here in Homosassa. They were heavily timbered for cedar fence posts, indoor cedar paneling. Remember those old cedar hope chests? And even number 2 pencils. There they are there. In fact, if you're a history buff, there was an old pencil factory just north of here at Cedar Key, Florida. They would harvest the trees, make the blanks for the pencils, and they would get the lead, the graphite from Siberia. Coming up on our left-hand side, those bright purple berries on the left bank, that's the beautyberry bush. You can actually make jam out of those berries. Another important industry I failed to mention, way back 100 years ago at least, is Spanish moss. Now Spanish moss you probably all know, even if you're not from Florida, is that brown stuff hanging from the trees, like on the left there, hanging from the trees. Now it's not a moss, it's not from Spain, it's an epiphyte, like an air plant, in the pineapple family, believe it or not. Now, when we were kids, we were really dumb. This stuff is full of bugs, chiggers, and spider mites. Don't bring it in your home. We'd put it in our hair, pretending we were long-haired rock stars, you know, air guitar. We would get bit up and itch for days. But there was a processing plant here that cleaned it and shipped it all over the road for seat cushions, mattresses, padding. That was back before the days of synthetic man-made material foam. Even Henry Ford got it for the seats of his Model T cars. But he mistakenly purchased the unprocessed. So by the time it got to Detroit, into the seats of his Model Ts, people bought the cars. All those little critters started hatching out, biting people where the sun don't shine. And that actually led to the first American automotive recall in history because of our bugs here. We've got several species of fish on the creek: brim, bass, catfish, alligator gar, and mullet. Has anybody here ever had mullet? Mullet or mullet dip? One person, okay. It's kind of a local fish, a Florida fish. It's the big fish you see jumping out of the water in the south. It's a vegetarian fish, so you gotta net it. It's pretty tasty. Smoked mullet or mullet dip in the smaller mom and pop shops around here. Well, in a moment I'll be putting this big guy into a narrow slip, so just a reminder to keep your elbows in. And we'll have the people up front disembark first and then file to the back. Well, thank you so much for coming along. I hope this reverse tour was okay. Again, my name is Captain Gregory. Thank you for visiting our park. Have a safe trip home to wherever you are from. Take care.
These two bigger ones, they're a little bigger than what you'd see in the wild. In the wild, they'll get about 1,000, 1,200 pounds. Once in a while, maybe get to 1,500. And this one weighs 2 years ago, she weighed 2,200 pounds. And this one over here weighs 2,000 pounds.
Wow.
But they get a better quality food. We feed lettuce. It's a better quality food they get in the wild, and they don't have to work for it. So. here watching. I know you got something.